All right, first Q&A of the channel. Let's see how this goes. The first question, the man with the hat. What's the story behind the photo of the older man with the long beard, round glasses, and a black hat? This one right here. His name is Terry. He lives in Oregon. A couple of years ago, I was shooting a lot of headshots for fire departments and for a whole bunch of other people in the area. And I saw him and I was like, I have to get that shot. He just has that look. So I added it to my booklets, the digital photography guide, as an example. It's got a lot of challenges, the hat, the glasses, the beard, but the expression, everything just kind of lined up. The denim jacket with the blue light from the side, I thought it looked really cool. I've submitted it to like the headshot crew and stuff like that, but I never win anything. But anyway, I thought that was a great shot. All right, question number 2. Can you make good stock photos using a smartphone? And absolutely. I'm not a big fan of phone photography, but modern smartphones can produce stock-worthy images and video. And the best thing is you have it with you all the time. And yes, they do better video than photos, but just having it with you is gonna make a big difference. The key is good lighting and understanding the limitations of your device. Okay, number 3, investing in gear. If you have a smartphone or an entry-level camera and $2,000 to spend, where would you spend that first? The camera, a lens, lighting, drone, or something else? And this is very tricky because we're all in different situations. Do you have a computer or software to edit? Are you doing everything on your phone? Are you editing everything on your phone? What do you shoot? What do you like to shoot? Before investing in gear, you wanna buy the right tools. If you already have an entry-level camera, what's missing? If your photos are sharp and you have enough range with your lenses, but let's say you lack frames per second, or the focus sucks, or dynamic range, then you will buy a new camera body. That would solve that particular issue, a new tool for that reason. If your camera is fine, but the photos are soft or not sharp, or you don't have enough reach, then you need a new lens. This totally depends on your shooting style, your subject matter. If you want to shoot wildlife and all you have is a wide angle, well, it's gonna be kind of tough. If you only have a phone, learn what you want to shoot on that phone, and then invest in the proper tool. Drones are fun, but I would not start with a drone. You have to take the test and pass the Part 107. That's more money and a lot of studying. If you're gonna shoot commercially, you're gonna need that Part 107 certificate. And with all the new rules coming out, flying was fun, now it just work. And you wanna do something that's fun. So again, to answer this, invest in education, and depending on what you want to shoot, I'd say lighting is one of those most important things there. Then fill your needs with specific tools. Okay, this one's great. Photography shyness. I'm shy about taking photos in public places because I feel like everyone's watching me. Do you have any advice for becoming more comfortable taking photos in public? Okay, so see, this one hits home for me because I was extremely shy growing up. Most of it was my own insecurities. Life put me in a place where I couldn't be shy anymore. It forced it out of me. It wasn't comfortable, but it literally changed my life. I know each one of us is different, and in my case, shyness came from lack of self-worth or lack of confidence. The better I got at whatever I was doing, my confidence grew and that shyness went away. The camera is always gonna get attention when you're out and about, and I've gotten jobs because of the camera. But not until I was comfortable enough showing my work. At first, I would hide behind that camera. I didn't want to show people anything. And then as my photos got better, I was happy sharing those with other people, and that gave me confidence. Then other people wanted to do what I was doing, and I started going on shoots with new friends, sharing the same interest. My point here is just be so good that you can't be ignored. I know it's out of your comfort zone, but you gotta be that good. This will give you confidence, and a lot more doors will open up for you. Practice in a quiet area of town until your photos get so good that you want to show them to people. Other people are going to be interested, and they're going to want to know what you're doing and where you're doing it. Then your confidence is going to grow, and I mean, you're going to be doing fantastic. But literally just start where you're comfortable and keep pushing the limits a little bit every day. My first 100 videos here on YouTube are painful to watch. I was embarrassed when somebody would say, "Hey, I saw one of your videos," and I was like, "Oh God, no." But now that's all changed. I'm comfortable, but it took over 100 videos to get to this point. Push your limits at your own pace, and you'll be happy you did. Okay, number 5. This one's cool too because it says, how can you create good photos when you don't have a lot of room for a studio? Any tips on working in small spaces? I literally just tested out a couple of new lights for a new video coming out hopefully next week, and right here in a corner, it didn't take any space whatsoever. And this is how I started. I started in a small room. I'm trying to go back to basics here, back to it all started. I had a spare bedroom and it wasn't used, but it was full with stuff. We had a bed and a couch and storage, so I didn't have a lot of room to use that bedroom. And literally in just a little table, like maybe the corner of this here, I was able to set up a tiny studio. The biggest thing is your lenses. A 50mm lens was great. 24-105 was fantastic because they compress the background so you don't get what's out there. If I shoot wide, you're gonna see everything. No, I wanna focus right here on something small. So a 50mm, 24-105, later the 70-200 worked out fantastic. The biggest thing is something that focuses closely because you don't have room. You can't back up too much because you don't have the space. So a macro lens like the 50, I think it's a macro, the 24-105, focuses on that far away from the camera, which is fantastic. And if you're able to zoom in, it'll compress the background and not distract with everything else. Yes, having the right lens is helpful, but the main thing is lighting. LED panels are flat and they don't take any space, so LED panels will be great. The ones I've been testing out are tiny lights, which is gonna be a really cool video. I got some great shots with those lights, and I'm actually literally impressed. I didn't know that we're gonna do that well, but I'm gonna show you that in the next video. So to answer that, you don't need a lot of space. You just need good quality lighting to help you maximize that space. All right, here's another question, and it says, I'm visiting Southern Oregon next month. Is there a Costco nearby? The answer is yes, there's a Costco in Medford. But if you have time, head over to Central Point and visit the Rock Museum. They have really cool rocks. And if you're driving through Nevada, the Area 51 Alien Center sells a pretty interesting bottle of tequila. Probably not made in space, but it's a fun souvenir. All right, next question, commercial versus editorial. If you're just starting out, would you focus on commercial or editorial content? What are the pros and cons and release requirements and that kind of stuff? Okay, so this is where you have to focus on the strengths of your setup, your camera, your phone, whatever you got. If you only have a macro lens, it's gonna be really hard to shoot editorial content. Does that make sense? Focus on your strength, your gear, your unfair advantage. I'm in the mountains right now. There's not much editorial content to shoot. So I find things that I think are gonna do great for stock. The pros with commercial photography is the description is easy and they can sell a lot more as evergreen content. The cons is that if you shoot models, you need model releases or property releases. It's not a con really, it's just an extra step. Editorial content is also easy and a lot of travel photos have to be editorials anyway. People, buildings, logos, private property. Remember that editorial photos are about capturing life as it's happening, especially newsworthy events. The downside of editorial content is the description. We all hate that, but that's why you shoot editorial content, is to capture events as they're happening, like a newspaper journalist. It's part of the job. If you just want to walk around and snap photos, you'll end up with snapshots, and that's probably not gonna sell. But if you shoot with intention and that goal in mind, you'll see more sales. You can't pose for an editorial photo. It has to happen how it happened. Not legally anyway. Now, regular commercial stock should be posed and composed for commercial usage. So yeah, shoot both whenever possible. There's no cons, just different styles, but remember to shoot with intention. Okay, next one is about aspect ratio. What photo aspect ratio sells the most? In my experience, standard horizontal and vertical formats tend to have the widest commercial use. You could always crop. Buyers can always crop to fit their needs. I did read a comment here on a previous video saying that their 4x5 vertical seems to sell a lot more than the 2x3 in their experience. For me, I just do the most I can get out of my sensor, and then anybody can crop for whatever they need. Okay, next, this one is about upload frequency. How many images should I submit each week to the stock agencies? Consistency matters more than volume, whether it's 10 images or 100 images a week. A steady upload schedule, it's usually better than a little bit here or a lot of it there. So let's say you have a large shoot over a weekend and you end up with 500 photos. Upload 20 a week or 50 a week. That's 10 weeks of 50 images every week. That'll give you time to shoot more and back up that folder. So if you have too many, then go to 100 a week. 10 is fine, 20 is fine, 1,000 is fine. Just do it every week for a long period of time. That's gonna help with the algorithm. Okay, next question. Writing descriptions. Taking photos is fun, but writing descriptions feels like torture. How do you write titles, descriptions, and keywords without losing your mind? Tell the full story behind the photo. This is the most important part. What are you photographing and why? If you want to succeed at stock photography, this is the real question. You need to shoot with intention. Ask yourself before you take the photo. For example, you can have a photo of a flower, a beautiful flower. Why did you take that photo? Why did you use that angle? Is it allergy season? Are you talking about the pollen from that particular flower? Then you make the photo about that pollen. But if you literally just, oh, that's pretty, taking a picture, you really don't know what you're photographing. When you shoot with intention, you can describe what you're taking a photo and why. If you're just shooting random things with no direction, it's gonna be very difficult to make sales. The description is the reason you took the photo. It's like here on YouTube, everybody tells you make the thumbnail first and then the video, and you're like, wait, what? But it's the same thing. You have to shoot with intention. You have to know what you're photographing before you take that photo. And then describing it is going to become easier because there's a reason why you took that photo. If you have your own questions, be sure to leave them here in the comments and I'll make a video answering those at a later time here. But let's move on to the next one. Does location matter? Do contributors from different countries get more visibility in the search results? Okay, generally the agencies prioritize relevance and buyer behavior. Again, consistency. Local content sometimes perform better in local markets, yes. And quality and demand usually matter more than where the contributor lives. And this is interesting. Let's do an experiment here in the comments. I don't know if anyone here watching is from Peru or has been to Peru. One of my best-selling travel photos is on Shutterstock is from Peru, 400 downloads in 5 years or so. If you live in Peru, you have the unfair advantage. Do you have any similar photos to this one? And if so, how are they selling? Let us know here in the comments. That's interesting. All right, the next one here is about country metadata. How important is it to specify the country where the image was created? Some agencies want you to, like Getty especially, they want to know where the image was created. Other ones it's optional, other ones don't really care. To me, that kind of depends on the subject and it's not really that relevant, but now for travel, culture, landmark, or local events, location can be very important. It can help buyers that don't know the name of a specific landmark find that photo. Let's say you're looking for photos from a specific country and you don't know that. You just click and sort by that country. You might not have the right name or title in the keywords, but if somebody's looking for a particular area on the map, it might help them find that photo. In that sense, I can see how it's important. I just never take the time to fill all those things. If it's not required, I don't put it on my thing. All right, this one is pretty cool, and it took me a long time to figure this out, but Dreamstime. Is there a faster way to submit images to Dreamstime instead of uploading just one at a time? And the answer is yes. Do I sound like that guy from Ancient Aliens? There's multiple ways to do it. I've been using Stalker Studio. They upload and submit the photos directly. Now, for the last few months, it wasn't working. I had 1,400 images that did not upload directly to submit directly to Dreamstime. And I wasn't gonna go one at a time because it would take forever. And I'm only making like, I don't know, $750 a year with Dreamstime. So that's not enough to spend weeks uploading or submitting photos. So I emailed Stalker Studio, I emailed Dreamstime, I reached out to as many people as I could, and I found out that the trick here is change your Dreamstime password to something without symbols, just letters and numbers. That's it, no weird symbols. And that changed something on my page, and now I can submit 100 photos at a time. If you don't have the categories, then Dreamstime uses their AI thing, and to be honest, I think a lot of these categories are gonna go away. But by changing my password, now I can submit 100 photos at a time. Boom, gone. And that also reactivated my Stalker Studio to do that. There's also another app here called Stock Submitter. I haven't used it. I've been using Stalker Studio. And Stock Submitter, as far as I understand, it's free to upload and submit to Dreamstime. So there you go. Now, Stalker Studio, yes, you have to pay for it. But like I said, one click, 1,400 photos went to Dreamstime. I don't have to do anything. What I make from Dreamstime pays for Stalker Studio, and I don't have to do anything with it. So it's a win-win for me. But remember, change your password to letters and numbers only, no weird symbols. Okay, let's move on to the next one on Adobe training AI thing, the missions. Why don't you talk much about the Adobe's AI training missions? Okay, this is interesting because I don't talk about it because I've never participated in one. I thought about it, I wanted to, I just never got around to it. Just life gets busy with YouTube and other photo jobs and stuff like that. Now, I did send a few emails out and I was trying to ask people that actually do it. And one of my viewers from the Spanish channel, Sandro Mejias, he shared his story. I was gonna make a whole video on this, but I didn't get enough stories to compare. Now, on his story, that's how he got up to $1,000 a month quickly selling stock photography, was by participating in these missions. If you guys are interested, I can make that video with Sandro's experience. It just won't be mine because I haven't done this. So just let me know here in the comments and we'll go from there. Whoa, I lost the list here. Okay, next. How strict are the agencies about logos, trademarks, and copyrighted material? Are the rules different when it comes to photo or video? The rules are generally the same, but agencies sometimes review video a little bit differently because of the individual frames. Now, when in doubt, just submit it as editorial if appropriate. Editing video is a lot different than photo. So if I shoot video, I try to cover logos like they do in the movies where they put tape or a colored paper to match the paint of the car or something. And they just put duct tape in front of the grill to cover the Toyota logo. Or, you know, like you just put tape on your shoe or in your jacket where it says it's got the name on it. Just plan your shoots. If you're outside in a city, it's very difficult because you're gonna have logos everywhere. That's when you blur the background. You get a lens that does a 1.4, 1.2. It's not impossible, it just takes a lot more planning. Your angles, where you're gonna shoot. And again, we're going back to shooting with intention. You have, you know, just check everything. If you're traveling and you're doing travel photos, chances are most of those are going to be editorials because a lot of cities and buildings, a lot of this is protected. You're gonna need property releases. And if you have more than one, that's just gonna be impossible to get. Okay, the next one here says, I photographed a computer screen showing a government business portal. Adobe rejected it as editorial and also rejected it as commercial due to intellectual property concerns. What would you do in this situation? Some content falls into a gray area where some agencies accept it, other agencies don't. So it may be better if you can create a concept image inspired by the topic rather than showing the actual website. Or try other agencies. Sometimes Adobe rejects some, Getty will take them, or Shutterstock will take them. That's why I upload to multiple agencies. Some are way less picky than others. But if you can come up with a concept that gets that idea across without having to use the official websites, you might even make more sales, because now it will be a commercial photo with the concept. Okay. That's all I got. I mean, I really don't know what else to say about that one. It's tough when one agency rejects it, other ones might take it. I've had photos rejected for apparently no reason. It just their reviewers or whatever particular agency's stance are on that subject. Next says, understanding rejections. Many of my photos get rejected for quality issues. What does that even mean? What are the most common quality problems agencies look for? And how could I identify them before submitting? Common reasons include soft focus, noise, motion blur, over processing, chromatic aberration, dust spots on your lens or on your sensor, artifacts or poor exposure, if it's too bright or too dark. When you zoom in at 100%, you might notice these things. Now, if you don't notice any of these issues at 100%, then upload the photo again. It could be a mistake, or it could be that they gave you that reason instead of, we already have too many photos of that subject, or there's little to no commercial value in this photo. I've gotten that before too. But literally just zoom in at 100% and examine that photo so you can see, check the focus first. If your subject is out of focus or even just slightly, they're gonna reject it for quality issues. But yeah, dust spots on the sky, you'll see those, they're little dark spots here, they're gonna reject it for that. So make sure you zoom in every time when you're processing the photos and check all of that before you upload. And the last question today is, how do you set up a photo shoot for yourself when I'm doing something? How do you photograph that? And I just made a few photos like that when I'm working on a tabletop. That's coming soon. But all I used was this wireless remote, and the flippy screen on the camera so I can see if it's recording or not. Yeah, it's recording. I didn't shut it off when I get this. But the goal is just to compose first, and it's a pain. You have to go out, come back, check composition, go again. And I mean, I did make a full video on this, and I'll link it right here. But basically, all you need is a remote and the flippy screen. That's it. The other accessories in the videos help, but they're not necessary. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. Now I gotta get to work. See, I got new things here I gotta install here in the studio.